As for Daniel, the consequences of what they had built together in secret eventually surfaced in his own life. His wife found out through channels entirely separate from mine. I played no part in that. I did not need to. The truth had its own momentum, as it always does. For a long time, I grieved. Not just Elena, but the life I had believed I was living. The version of myself who had trusted so completely. The 7 years I was forced to re-examine in a different light. But grief, if you are willing to walk through it rather than around it, eventually becomes something quieter. Steadier. Something that looks, if you are patient, a little like wisdom. What I know now that I did not know then is this: the life I had was comfortable. The life I am building is honest. And there is no comfort on earth worth trading for the ability to look at your own life without flinching. She thought the secret would hold. One open browser tab decided otherwise. And I have learned, the hard way, the only way that truly teaches, that the most important moments of your life rarely announce themselves. They arrive quietly, on ordinary evenings, while you are simply trying to catch a flight. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needed to hear it today. I found out my girlfriend was cheating by accident. What I did next changed everything. I was just trying to print a boarding pass. That's it. That's all I was doing on that quiet Thursday evening while Elena sat in the kitchen humming to herself, completely unaware that in 30 seconds, our entire 7-year relationship was about to detonate in the palm of my hands. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't suspicious. I wasn't the kind of man who checked phones or demanded passwords or interrogated his partner about every unanswered call. I was the kind of man who trusted completely, perhaps, as I would later understand, to the point of blindness. My laptop was dead. Hers was open on the desk. I needed one document. 30 seconds, maybe less. But the browser tab that greeted me wasn't a blank screen. It was a hotel booking confirmation. Copenhagen. 4 nights. Departing the same Friday that Daniel, her colleague, the man she had mentioned perhaps twice in 3 years, had supposedly attended a solo client conference. 2 names on that reservation. Hers. And his. I stood there in the silence of our home, 7 years of memories pressing against my chest, and felt the floor shift beneath me in a way it never quite levels out from. Let me tell you about Elena, because she deserves to be understood before she is judged. She was the kind of woman who made you feel, simply by being near her, that everything was going to be fine. Warm, sharp, effortlessly kind. She remembered the names of strangers' children. She brought soup to neighbors she barely knew. She had this laugh, loud and completely unself-conscious, that could fill a restaurant and make the whole room feel like it was in on the joke. When we moved in together after 3 years of dating, I told my brother I had never felt so certain about anything in my life. He clapped me on the back and said, "That's how you know." I believed him. I believed her. For 7 years, I believed everything. She traveled for work occasionally, project consultations, she called them, and I never once questioned the details. Why would I? She always called. She always came back lighter, more energized, the way people do when their professional life is feeding them. I was proud of her drive. I admired it. I should have paid closer attention to what, or who, was fueling it. I printed my boarding pass. I closed the tab. I walked back to the kitchen, sat across from her, and watched her pour 2 glasses of wine with a smile that now felt like a language I was only just learning to read. I said nothing. Because I had learned something about myself in that moment at the desk. I was not a man who acted on emotion. I was a man who needed to be certain before he spoke. And I was not yet certain enough. So I watched. Over the following 2 weeks, I paid attention in ways I never had before, not frantically, not dramatically, but with the quiet and devastating focus of a man who already knows the answer and is simply collecting the evidence to confirm it. The phone calls that ended the moment I entered a room. The screen angled away with the practiced ease of long habit. A dinner receipt on the kitchen counter for a restaurant I had driven past 100 times but never been invited to. A weekend where she came home smelling of a cologne that was not mine and immediately went upstairs to shower without kissing me hello. Small things. Individually, explainable. Together, they formed a portrait I could no longer look away from. On the 14th day, I found the second email account. I wasn't hacking. I wasn't violating anything. She had stayed logged in on the shared home computer, careless in the way people become when a secret has been kept so long it starts to feel permanent. What I read in those messages I will not describe in detail, because some pain does not need a public inventory. What I will say is this: it had not been a few nights. It had not been a moment of weakness. It had been months. Coordinated, deliberate, affectionate in ways that confirmed this was not a mistake she had stumbled into but a choice she had made, and remade, repeatedly. On a Sunday morning, while the coffee brewed and the early light came through the kitchen windows and everything looked precisely as it always had, I asked her to sit down. She denied it first. Confidently. Almost impressively. Elena had always been articulate under pressure. It was one of the things I had loved most about her. She constructed her denial the way a skilled architect constructs a building, fast, load-bearing, designed to withstand interrogation. But I had not walked into that conversation unprepared. I placed the evidence on the table between us. Not angrily. Not triumphantly. Just quietly, the way you set down something heavy you have been carrying too long. I watched the architecture of her denial collapse in real time. What followed was the part one had expected and dreaded in equal measure. The tears. The explanations that started strong and disintegrated under the weight of their own contradictions. It wasn't what I planned. It got out of hand. I didn't know how to stop. I still love you. I have always loved you. I listened to every word. Then I asked the only question that mattered. When were you going to tell me? The silence that filled the kitchen was the most honest answer she ever gave me. I moved out 3 weeks later. I took my books, my records, my coffee machine, and the small framed photograph of my father that had always sat on the shelf above her fireplace without complaint. I left cleanly. No scenes. No cruelty. Just a door closing behind me with a finality that I felt in my spine. The mutual friends divided themselves as mutual friends always do, some with grace, some with awkwardness, some with a speed that told me their loyalties had always been decided. I bore no one ill will. People choose. That is their right.